Welcome to America's Forum for this Friday. President Obama has a Valentine for illegals, tax refunds that'll come right out of your pocket. The IRS Commissioner told Congress about it in a subcommittee hearing earlier this week. We'll hear his words. Then a member of that subcommittee, Congressman MICK, has this morning's view from the Hill.
Under the new program, if you get a Social Security number and you work, you'll be eligible to apply for the Earned Income Tax Credit.
Is the Earned Income Tax Credit only going to be available to illegal immigrants who filed taxes previously, or is it going to be available to all of them who receive Social Security numbers under the new program?
If you get a Social Security number, you can then file for this year if you're working. And if you earned income in the 3 years before that and filed, you'll be eligible. If you did not file, you'll have to file a return, and you'll have to file to demonstrate with the same information you would anybody else would that you actually earned income and therefore were eligible.
Were you shocked beyond belief with the story you had to tell about the Earned Income Tax Credit and illegals?
You know, it was one of those things I thought was an internet rumor, and we get those a lot, and you know, you get stuff come across your desk and that can't possibly be true. But I had seen the Chuck Grassley interview from the couple days before where Mr. Koskinen said that if you were an illegal immigrant and had filed a tax return for 3 years, then you could go back and claim the Earned Income Tax Credit under the President's amnesty. And then I got an email that said, but maybe you didn't have to file that tax return. Maybe anybody who got in under amnesty could make the claim. So I just asked him flat out, and he said, yeah. He said, you don't have to have filed a tax return. You just have to be able to prove that you had worked, that you had earned income. So I was flabbergasted. Please allow that one to settle in for a moment, because that's just outrageous. But yes, that's absolutely correct. What they'll have to do is the President will issue them a Social Security number. Once they have that, they'll be able to file at least 3 years back taxes, file a tax return for 3 years in the past, and if they can establish that they earned income while they were here illegally, they'll still be able to collect the full Earned Income Tax Credit for those 3 years that they were working here illegally.
So we have a situation where legitimate taxpayers, people who have played by the rules, who have worked for years, will basically be paying a tax refund to people who are here illegally, and on top of being illegal, they're tax scofflaws.
Yeah, it's an amnesty bonus. It's outrageous, and the people I feel bad for taxpayers. I feel bad for me. I feel bad for you. I feel bad for everybody who's paying taxes. But really, the folks you feel bad for are the folks who have gone through the system legally, and when they become citizens or they get the right to work, they are not going to be able to do this. It's a bonus. It's a reward for having come here illegally and worked illegally.
In questioning, Commissioner Koskinen said the White House did not ask him about the economic implications of this amnesty, or he didn't volunteer the information. In terms of his conduct, as he showed up before your committee time and again, does he try to evade answers by responding only carefully to the way a question is phrased to him?
In fairness to Mr. Koskinen, it was the first time I've had him in front of my subcommittee, the subcommittee I was on yesterday was the very first time, and he was very direct. He did not dodge the questions. I asked him, did the White House ever call you? He said, no. I said, have they called you since they did the law? And he said, no. He said, in fact, they've never called me called me at any time about anything on this. So he was very forthcoming on this issue. I have to give him credit for that. He was not evasive and was very clear that the reporting of his interview with Senator Grassley needed to be clarified, and he wanted to make it clear that folks who were here even if they had not filed a tax return, could still get the Earned Income Tax Credit. So I got to give the gentleman credit. He was completely forthcoming on that occasion yesterday. I know that he has a reputation for being less than that, and I'd be curious to see how he conducts himself the next time.
Yeah, and apart from that cooperative conduct in front of your subcommittee, Mick, of course, this testimony before your House subcommittee was in direct contradiction, was it not, to what he told Chuck Grassley and Mr. Grassley's committee in the Senate the week before?
Yeah, I think that's I don't know if it's fair to say it's in direct contradiction. I gave him the chance to clarify. He said, yes, it needs to be clarified. Let me be clear what the law is and what the current status of the the amnesty is, and then he laid it out for us. So it wasn't like I had to pull teeth. So I don't want to impugn any type of ill intention to his testimony before Senator Grassley. In fact, I went back to read, J.D., the text, and I think there was some mutual misunderstanding on both his part and the senator last week. So I'll give credit where credit is due. The gentleman was completely forthcoming, and the real issue is not Koskinen. Obviously, the real issue here is the White House never asked him anything. You've been in Congress. You know, if you and I want to pass a law, if you and I wanted to do by law what the president did by executive amnesty, we have to go down to the Congressional Budget Office and get a cost estimate on what it would mean to the taxpayers, and then we have to go find a way to pay for it. The president doesn't play by those rules. The president can make law by himself now. It doesn't have to care about what things cost. That's the real issue here, is the fact that the IRS was never asked before and hasn't been asked since.
We'll talk about it. Welcome back. First, the IRS Commissioner tells a congressional subcommittee that illegals who did not pay taxes can qualify for the Earned Income Tax Credit. Then, state elections officials testify that the president's executive amnesty may also let illegals vote. Let's continue the conversation with Congressman Mick Mulvaney. Mick, what did Ohio's Secretary of State tell you?
We had the Secretary of State from Ohio testify before us and said exactly that. He said that under the rules of his state, you know, if you've got a Social Security number, very easy for you to get a voter ID, and that Ohio is not alone in that. So yes, that is a real risk. Another example of the president acting not only unilaterally, but in an ill-conceived and not well thought out manner. He doesn't care about anything other than amnesty, and if it means that people get to vote, fine. Why does that bother him? If people get the Earned Income Tax Credit on taxes they haven't paid, that's fine too, right? And why does he care? He's only interested in the ends, and the ends are amnesty for the folks who are here illegally. Yeah. So again, another unfair thing to do to folks, unfair to people who are here legally, unfair to citizens and naturalized citizens alike who have worked hard to earn the right to vote and keep the right to vote. If you work hard and you play by the rules, you get the short end of the stick, and the folks who break the rules and don't play by them are the ones who are getting the benefit here, and that's just patently unfair to the large percentage of people who are playing by the rules. And there's another issue we haven't talked about, which is the financial incentive to hire these folks who have been here illegally. I don't know if you've talked about it on your show previously or not, but there's actually about a $3,000 per employee incentive for employers to hire folks who qualify for this amnesty, and that is because the folks who qualify for the amnesty are specifically excluded from Obamacare. That sounds great, except that if you hire one of these folks, that means that you don't have to provide them health insurance. You don't have to pay the fee for not providing them health insurance. It gives employers a very real and very tangible incentive to hire somebody who was here illegally because it saves them $3,000 per employee. By the way, that's not hyperbolic. That's not exaggeration. That's just the law. Was it intended? Again, I don't care. But the fact of the matter is that is the world we are living in now. So it goes far beyond just the Earned Income Tax Credit and the right to vote, and goes into incentives. And it could be more. We don't know. The more we learn about the application of the order, the more we learn about it. It could get much worse here, the more we know.
Well, mindful of that, we have about a minute and a half left, Congressman Mick Mulvaney. What is Congress prepared to do about it? Because time is of the essence.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And we passed an appropriations bill out of the House about 4 weeks ago. It had an amendment written by Robert Adderhold of Alabama and myself that would defund all of what the president did in his executive amnesty. We sent that to the Senate. The Senate so far has been unable to take it up.
The Senate leader could move to bust any filibuster by the Democrats. I know it's the separate chamber, but do you believe Senate Republicans have the stomach for the fight to bust the filibuster and stop any actions by the Democrats to stop this defunding of aiding illegals?
Yeah, the short answer is I was in a press conference today when I suggested the Senate change its filibuster rules. Ted Cruz spoke right after me, and the reporter asked him what he thought about my idea, and he said he didn't like it very much. JD, I think the Senate has some very difficult decisions to make. Not difficult to me, but difficult in terms of their history. They have a rule right now that is allowing a small group of Senate Democrats to trample on the Constitution, or better, allow the president to trample on the Constitution. That rule is the filibuster rule. And I think the Senate Republicans need to decide what is more important. This rule, which is not in the Constitution, has been changed from time to time by Republicans and Democrats over the course of the years. Is that rule more important, or is the Constitution more important? I was a little disappointed today when I suggested the rule change, and the Senate changed the rule, and Ted Cruz immediately dismissed that as something that he would not consider. That was disappointing to me. I would think that good conservative senators across the building from us would look at a rule and look at the Constitution and say, look, I like the rule. I understand the importance of protecting the minority. I understand the heritage and the tradition of the Senate. But to the extent it's being used by Democrats to allow the president to trample on the Constitution, we need to change the rule. That I would think that would make sense to people. It would be done only because of the extraordinary circumstances. It would not be presidential for other more minor matters. But if the rules are being used to trample on the Constitution, then the rules have to go. If that answers your question about the Senate's resolve in fighting this, I don't know if I can make it any more clear than that.
Well, of course, the object is time, and there's another way to bust the filibuster, and that's just to remain in session and fight it out to the bitter end. Unfortunately, we've come to the end of our time. Congressman Mick Mulvaney, thank you so much for sounding the alarm. So, how will you react to that alarming news? Looks like it's time to call not only your congressman, but your 2 senators yet again. We will call on former Pentagon spokesman J.D. Gordon when we come back. Stay with us. America's Forum continues for a Friday from Newsmax TV.